And we have some information-dense content coming up for you. We're going to see a talk from another builder, a talk from yours truly, who's also a builder, and then a panel of the builders who are building the future of decentralized media. So if everyone could cease their side conversations and return to the seating area, please, to stop having side conversations and come on back over. We're going to hear now from Matt Tavares, who works at the intersection of conflict, national security, policy, intelligence, and the technologies that support them. Over the past 15 years, he served in the office of the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America in a range of policy-making roles. Most recently as team lead for asymmetric threats on the Russia desk at OSD Policy. In that position, Matt led efforts to counter Russian external operations, support Ukraine's defense, while managing Russia-related issues in the Middle East, North Africa, and cyberspace. Please welcome to the stage, Matt Tavares.
Hello, hello. I recognize I have the most unusual resume in the room, perhaps, but we have some very interesting speakers here who are we're all kind of talking in the same direction. And what we're trying to do is create a new sort of news media that functions better than the traditional media models of old. So when I left the Pentagon back in 2024, I took a variety of dreams that I had about using open source intelligence to better inform the work of traditional journalists. Combine this with the latest in blockchain tech and the things that we think we can do or we know we can do today, and you have my company, Protocol Media Labs. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm doing the slide. Click in. Can you do the clicking? Thank you. So we're just going to focus on one aspect of the platform and the work that we're doing at Protocol Media Labs, and just look at the journalistic tools that we're trying to build for journalists that are working on our platform, and also a variety of analysts that will be contributing support to those journalists. So we think that blockchain provides an opportunity for an entirely new era of journalistic tools that we're trying to build. The first is that we think that open source intelligence analysis can be very profitable. Most of the people that are doing open source intelligence analysis are doing it on contract to governments, are doing it on contract to traditional news media organizations, or quite frankly, just are doing it for free and for the love of it, and are using it in social media, creating their own brands around their OSINT analysis. But the reality is that OSINT struggles to be profitable, and we think we have a way we can make it much more profitable. The next is we can increase revenue to freelancing journalists. So if you look at Substack and some of these other platforms, they provided like a really interesting avenue for journalists to monetize their work. But what people don't realize is that the take rates from these platforms are growing higher and higher, cutting into the revenues of the journalists that are working there. But also, there's other sort of traditional banking issues associated with freelance journalism based on where you are in the world that further cuts into your revenue. And then lastly, as a person with an intelligence background, I keep thinking about stringer networks and the ideas around sourcing from humans and what that looks like and how that can be done more safely, both to the journalist and to the source. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a picture from 2015 of ISIS standing in the desert with 2 hostages. Next slide, please. Here's what an open source intelligence analyst might see. Back one. So they're reading the lay of the land behind them. And giving you a lat longe for a location of this video is of a beheading. And then they're looking at the lay of the shadows off of the people standing in the image and determining the time at which that occurred. An open source analysis analyst would then take that image, look at the lat longe using a mapping program, and given the density of satellite coverage today and the density of satellite coverage that we expect will occur in the near future, be able to probably see that murder take place. That's the kind of value that open source intelligence analysis might provide to a journalist to not only get the human aspect of the story, but also the concrete data that shows the event occurring. That skill needs to be monetized. And it needs to be profitable, because it's what is going to make people trust journalism more? It's going to add additional context to stories where they might not otherwise get it. And it's quite frankly going to bring a lot of people off the sidelines who don't want to pay for media to pay for media. Next slide, please. So we talk about creating pathways to easy monetization. So what you see here is a mock-up of a bounty board for sourcing and analytical support Protocol Media Labs. It's very basic. A source or a journalist wants a slice of data, they place a bounty to get that information. Now you might say, well, this is new, or this is an interesting thing. This already exists in Web3. People are already pursuing bounties to follow and track web or wallets. These articles that you see every now and then about Ethereum whales moving X amount of capital, this is from people who are tracking those wallets over time. It's completely doable, and the system that we've established will allow that work and analytical support to be used in favor of the journalists on our platform. Next slide. So I copied this from the New York Times, and the reason why I did that is because I have a personal awareness of the events in question. So many of you remember Yevgeny Prigozhin, the well-known leader of the Wagner Group in Russia. He decided to stage a putsch on the government and started driving his personnel from Rostov-on-Don all the way to Moscow. I had a good friend at the New York Times at this. I was also the Prigozhin guy, but I had a good friend at the New York Times who was giving me very detailed information about where the convoy was and what it was doing that was, in some cases, better than the stuff that I saw on the other side. So I called them up and said, how are you guys pulling this together? Very simple. New York Times, the top newspaper in the United States, the most revenue-producing newspaper in the United States, has contracts with open source analysis for open source analysis, and they pulled in on contract about 30 OSINT analysts to look at social media along the route, to look at all the other data along that route, and provide up-to-the-minute updates about where that convoy was at. Now here's the problem. In this single image is about 30 different people's work. None of them got paid for the residuals off of this map or this product or this story. They all got their contractual payments, whatever those might have been, and then New York Times moved on. There's a better way. You can use blockchain to determine the exact inputs of each analyst into the project and confer them residuals if you want, and also pay them a contractual amount on top of that. Next slide, please. So you can also, I talked about OSINT analysis and how great it is and how it can be used in the service of journalists, but you can also make more money for journalists. So the platform take rate right now, Substack, takes about 10%. This may not seem like much, but if you are working in a place with maybe a banking system that isn't as good as the West, or you're operating in an area where you don't want to receive cash payments in US dollars for whatever reason, there's suddenly a number of additional middlemen between you and the platform's take. Okay? So I spoke with frontline journalists in Ukraine. I spoke with Ukrainians when I started putting this project together. I spoke with folks who had built large media platforms in the United States first on Substack, and then they realized that, if you get 2 million subscribers, Substack's take rate is extortion. Many of them told me that they built their system on Substack first only to realize that they could, if they were very successful as a platform, get off of Substack, take the money that they were paying to Substack, and build their own server stack and hire someone to run it. When I talk to Ukrainian journalists, they tell me that 10% is the start, 30 to 40% reduction in overall revenue to what they actually see in their wallet from the various middlemen between them and their stories' revenue. Next slide. Talk about reduced banking fees and lower risk of being debanked. All of that stuff is able to be done using cryptocurrency as the medium of exchange. I think we all know that, but if you build that into the system at the baseline, journalists will naturally be incentivized to come to you because you're giving them more return on their stories. Next slide. Lastly, crypto is great because you can juice crowdfunding in all kinds of interesting ways. So I've shown you as kind of the Web 2's variant of crowdfunding. All of those platforms have some kind of take rate that sits in between the story that's being produced and the revenue that the journalist actually receives. All of those things can be cut. All those take rates can be cut by 5 to 7 to 8% simply through using cryptocurrency and the right kind of cryptocurrency in the right market. Next slide. Okay, stringer networks. So we had a couple of researchers here who were talking about the importance of encrypted messaging, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in the panel that I'm going into right after this. I showed the picture on the top right. This is the fall of Bashar al-Assad that happened in December of last year. To the surprise of many journalists, to the surprise of many military analysts, and to the surprise, quite frankly, of much of the Syrian regime. The sound you heard the day after Bashar al-Assad's fall was all of the traditional news media organizations spinning up their stringer networks, getting new assets in the country who could report on what was going on, because the previous regime was very hostile to Western journalists. It was dangerous. Both dangerous from a regime perspective, but also dangerous because in many cases the rebel factions were doing awful things to journalists as well. So one of the things that blockchain can do is provide secure messaging. There's secure messaging on almost every single blockchain that's either been developed or is being developed. Guardian is getting, I just noticed a few days ago, Guardian is getting on board as well and producing their own secure messaging app. That's going to allow them to reach out to sources that might otherwise come to them or might otherwise talk to them, or for whom they have no established initial relationship. That can also be used in the service of journalism for a Web3 project as well. Next slide. So this is a basic stringer network. I think about this as an intelligence analyst and collector. One of the great things about blockchain and secure messaging and using encryption to your advantage and using pseudonymous sort of techniques is that you separate yourself in multiple ways from the source. But you can validate that the source information is correct using a reputational system. I think Olas was talking about something like that earlier, and I think that's a great idea. And I think it's something that will have to be incorporated into journalistic tradecraft moving forward. Next slide. I don't think we often think about the source being a threat to the journalist or the journalist being a threat to the source, but the reality is that in the current digital environment, both situations are true, and it's never been more risky to be a source than right now. We're long past the days of a guy smoking a cigarette in a parking garage giving you a paper copy of something that's important that can never be traced back to him. We're long past that. Every transmission that is done can and will be tracked. Even encryption can be cracked if given enough time. Is the thing that you're telling that government going to come out in your lifetime? It may if you live long enough. So using blockchain and ZK proofs specifically to validate that the other person on the other side is a known and well understood source that's responsive to tasking, has provided truthful information in the past, is super important. Establishing that disconnect is I think, where blockchains will work well, and quite frankly, where ZK proofs will come in quite valuable. Next slide. So this is me, Matt Tavares, running Protocol Media Labs right now, and these are my socials. If you want to do the QR code thing, that's great. If not, I'll yield the rest of my time back to the organizer. Thanks.